Harrison Ford, a legend who defined Hollywood's golden age of blockbusters. Known for iconic roles like Indiana Jones and Han Solo. But behind that timeless charm lies a rarely told story. One of hidden grudges and silent conflicts with some of the biggest names in the industry. Today, we uncover the 6 actors Harrison Ford openly admitted to hating. Not out of petty jealousy, but deep disappointment and broken trust. From heated on-set clashes towards spoken in private that never reached the tableau, these stories reveal a side of Ford rarely seen by fans. A man who values respect and professionalism above all else. Stay with us as we dive into the untold chapters behind the legend where pride, friendship, and betrayal collide. If you love Hollywood's golden era and crave truth behind the stars, you're in the right place. Number 1. Shia LaBeouf, the disrespect that cut too deep. In 2008, Harrison Ford returned as Indiana Jones. Older, wiser, still every bit thick under the fedora. But this time he wasn't alone. Shia LaBeouf, Hollywood's new wild child, played his son in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. On screen it was supposed to be a torch-passing moment. A father and son adventure stitched into Hollywood legend, but off screen the energy was tense. Oil and water, Bauer, who had survived old Hollywood system with grace and grit, valued discipline and quiet dignity. Shia, on the other hand, brought a fire that often burned bridges. When the film received mixed reviews, LaBeouf did something Ford never would have. He publicly criticized the movie and Ford's performance. "I feel like I dropped the ball on the legacy that people loved and cherished," Shia said in interviews. It sounded like humility, but Ford didn't buy it. His reply came sharp and honest. "When I was his age, I would have kept my mouth shut. That wasn't just disappointment. It was a wound." Ford had taken the role seriously, not just for himself, but for fans, the legacy, the spirit of adventure. Shia's comments to him felt like betrayal, not of ego, but of principle. They never worked together again. Ford didn't explode, didn't run to tabloids. That wasn't his way. He simply closed the door. The kind of door that never reopens, and in that silence, you could almost hear the echo of old-school Hollywood values fading. To this day, the LaBeouf chapter remains one of Ford's deepest disappointments, not because the film failed, but because respect, once broken, doesn't heal easily in a man raised on loyalty. Number 2. Alec Baldwin, the Jack Ryan Cold War. In the early 90s, Jack Ryan became a cinematic icon, a thinking man's hero born from Tom Clancy's pages. Alec Baldwin first embodied Ryan in The Hunt for Red October, giving him a sharp, charismatic edge that resonated with audiences. But when it came time for Patriot Games, something unexpected happened. Baldwin was out. Harrison Ford was in. To the public, it was business, a shuffle of contracts and scheduling conflicts. But behind the polished Hollywood announcements, there were whispers of something far colder. Alec Baldwin, fiery and outspoken even then, believed Ford maneuvered for the role. Baldwin later revealed in his memoir, Harrison wanted the part. That's the truth, and he got it. Ford, however, never said a word. He didn't answer Baldwin's accusations, didn't join the news. Silence was his weapon. And for many, that silence said more than words ever could. Those who worked close to production said the transition was easy. Not violent, not loud, but the kind of tension you feel in the quiet before a storm. Baldwin, younger and brimming with bravado, represented a different kind of Hollywood. Louder, faster, always ready for the spotlight. Ford, in contrast, was the craftsman, the man who believed the story mattered more than the actor. To him, Baldwin's public remarks broke an unspoken rule. Keep the busyness behind the curtain. For Ford, grudges didn't come with shouting matches. They came with a glance, a door quietly closing, a phone call that was never returned. He took over the role off Jack Ryan with a commanding stillness, while Baldwin never touched that character again. To this day, the tension lingers as a ghost story in Hollywood. Proof that in this town, the quiet battles are the ones that cut the deepest. Number 3. Brad Pitt, Theklish on the Devil's Own. In 1997, two of Hollywood's brightest stars stood shoulder to shoulder in The Devil's Own, a gritty thriller about trust, betrayal, and moral conflict. On one side was Brad Pitt, the heartthrob of a new generation still in the heat of his meteoric rise. On the other stood Harrison Ford, older, legendary, carved from the stone of classic American cinema. What looked like a dream pairing on paper quickly turned into a battlefield behind the scenes. From the beginning, the production was plagued by rewrites and creative disputes. Pitt, passionate and expressive, wanted a deeper, darker portrayal of his Ira character. Ford, cast as the conflicted American cop, insisted the film was meant to center on his character's moral dilemma. As Ford later stated bluntly, Brad developed the script, then I developed my character, then we had a problem. It wasn't ego, at least not in the way tabloids would describe it. For Ford, it was about narrative clarity. He believed in structure, in knowing whose story was being told. Pitt, still carving his space in the industry, pushed for artistic freedom. What resulted was a slow, grinding Cold War between two vastly different acting philosophies. Ford didn't yell. He didn't make a scene, but those close to the set described a tension that never left. A constant pull between two powerful forces who couldn't quite meet in the middle. In interviews, Ford remained professional, careful with his words. Pitt later admitted the film was the most irresponsible thing I've ever been part of. A rare moment of regret that echoed long after the credits rolled. They never collaborated again. To Ford, it was another lesson. Talent without talent leads to chaos. And in a career defined by control and clarity, The Devil's Own became one chapter Halleck wished had never been written. Number 4, Josh Hartnett. There's an meant on Hollywood Homicide. In 2003, Hollywood Homicide promised a classic odd couple cop story, mixing Harrison Ford's seasoned gravitas with Josh Hartnett's youthful charm. On screen, it was meant to be a blend of grit and wit. A veteran detective forced partner with a rookie more interested in yoga and acting than catching criminals, but off-screen, the chemistry was strained at best. Ford, then in his early 60 seconds, was a master of subtlety. A quiet presence who had earned his place through decades of discipline and professionalism. Hartnett, still riding the wave of early fame, approached the craft differently, less preparation, more improvisation, and in Ford's eyes, far less seriousness, according to those close to the production. Ford grew increasingly frustrated with Hartnett's attitude. He didn't scream. He didn't argue, but he grew cold, distantly professional. For Ford, acting was a commitment. Everything was a responsibility, not a playground. Hartnett, by contrast, treated the set more like a rehearsal space than a stage. Director Ron Shelton later admitted that while the film had potential, the stars didn't get along. It was in Ford's career one of the rare times when his deep-seated patience ran thin. He reportedly referred to the production as difficult, which in Ford's typically restrained language spoke volumes. Hartnett years later would recall the experience with a mix of respect and defensiveness, admitting he struggled to find his footing alongside Ford's commanding presence. But the damage had already been done. There was no camaraderie, no lasting connection, just a film that underperformed and a working relationship that never resumed. Ford never publicly criticized Hartnett. He didn't need to. His silence was final. A quiet verdict on a co-star he likely saw was unprepared for the weight of the roles he played. In Ford's world, professionalism wasn't optional, and when that line was crossed, there was no second chance. Number 5, Sean Young. The fallout from Blade Runner. Blade Runner was never meant to be just another film. It was a dark, moody masterpiece ahead of its time. And in 1982, it brought together two very different actors. Harrison Ford, already a rising legend, and Sean Young, young, bold, and determined to leave her mark. The tension between them wasn't just artistic. It was personal. Behind the haunting neon glow of Ridley Scott's dystopian vision, the set was charged with unease. Ford, known for his quiet professionalism, found himself opposite an actress whose approach was intense and often unpredictable, according to those on set. Their scenes crackled with real tension, not their romantic chemistry the script called for, but something raw and unspoken. Shia Young later revealed that Ford was distant, even cold during filming. She felt isolated, even bullied. Ford, for his part, never publicly responded in detail, but his expression in interviews and his reluctance to discuss the film for years spoke volumes. Director Ridley Scott once admitted they were not getting along. Their most intimate scene, the controversial love scene, has since been re-examined by critics and fans. What was meant to be emotional became mechanical. The discomfort between them was palpable and it bled onto the screen. Some saw Ford's performance as detached, others so restrained. But insiders knew the truth. The actors weren't pretending to be uncomfortable, they truly were. Years later, when Blade Runner 2049 was announced, Sean Young hoped to return. She wasn't asked. Ford did return, older, more reflective, but still silent in the past. The tension between them remained a closed chapter. To Ford, it may not have been hatred, but it was certainly a fracture, one that never healed in a career built on Carefalicus and bonds. Shia Young represented their relationship that fell apart before he'd ever found footing. Some memories, like some futures, never arrive. They simply linger, unresolved and unforgettable. Number 6. Chad Everett, the onset clash that never left. Before Harrison Ford became a household name before the Millennium Falcon and The Fedora, he was a struggling actor in the late 1960 seconds, taking whatever small television roles he could get. One-off host roles placed him opposite Chad Everett, the star of the hit medical drama Medical Center. What happened during that brief encounter would leave a scar Ford never forgot. Ford was young, eager, and still learning the mechanics of Hollywood. Everett, already a TV star, carried himself with confidence, the kind that cemented into arrogance. During their brief collaboration, something happened. The details are few, but Ford has recalled the incident in rare point terms. He was patronizing, arrogant. He treated me like I was nothing. It wasn't fight. There were no raised voices, not dramatic confrontation, just a moment's harp enough to be remembered decades later when Ford, now a global icon, reflected on those early days. In one interview, he didn't name Everett directly, but his words left little doubt. There was a guy treated me like I wasn't even human. I never forgot that. Everett's behavior may have seemed normal in an era where stars ruled sets like kings. But for Ford, whose success came through grit, patience, and humility, it was unforgivable. That single moment crystallized midst in him. A quiet refusal to ever treat anyone the way he'd been treated. He carried that lesson forward. Ford became known for his low-key presence on set, his respect for crews, and his disdain for Hollywood arrogance that early wound shaped the man who would one day command billion-dollar franchise. Not with ego, but with enduring, quiet control. Sometimes the people who teach us the most are the ones who wound us first. Chad Everett may have forgotten that day, but Harrison Ford never did. The quiet weight of memory. Harrison Ford never needed drama to make a point. He didn't chase headlines or fuel feuds. Instead, he remembered in silence, in glances, in the way he chose never to work with certain names again. Each of these stories isn't about hatred in the loud, obvious way. They're about respect when it's lost and what that loss costs. For Ford, grudges weren't weapons. They were lessons. And in Hollywood, where fame is fleeting and trust is rare, those lessons became part of who he is. Behind the hero, behind the legend, is a man who never forgot how people made him feel. If these stories moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Whose chapter surprised you most? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us cause the truth behind Hollywood's golden age still has shadows left to explore.